Hello and welcome to part 3 and the final part of the breakdown series on our EP Desolate to celebrate its 1 year anniversary. So finally we have the long track, the final track, Remnants. This track was actually written in this very chair. Well, not this chair, I've had a new chair since then, but you know, this spot. So coming into it, this track is mostly in B harmonic minor, actually, that main riff, because the first track is in B natural minor, second track is in C sharp minor, and I kind of wanted to have another track that was chuggy and on the low string, but didn't just want to have another track in B minor, so I opted for harmonic minor, so using that major 7th over the minor scale instead of the minor 7th. Some stabs on there. Now, this one was a little bit hard for me to track because I decided to write this whole song being played on a fretless bass. Because I'm a huge fan of Sean Malone from Cynic. Now, the tone-wise for this, it's less Sean Malone, more Steve DiGiorgio, but you know, or still great tone. I'm not quite up to playing it live on a fretless yet. I've not had a chance to go down the woodshed and practice enough because my intonation is still a bit like that. But in studio, if it was particularly bad in places, you know, you can just do it again. That's the whole beauty of being in studio. Here's what the rhythm guitars sound like with that riff. Very thick, because in this track we haven't really, well, at least for the first bit, we have not got that much in terms of synthesizer and stuff going on, so it gives actually more room for the guitars, and the fact that my fretless bass, which what I'm using is a heavily modified Squier MB series 5-string with the frets removed, and the guy I bought it off did something with the pickups and then added an active preamp to it, so it doesn't sound like your stock MB5. I have no idea what it is though. They're unbranded, but they sound wicked. But the way this one sounds leaves a lot more leaves a lot more bass sound in the mid range, but a lot less in the top end and a little less in the bottom. So it gives the guitars a little bit more room to fill that space. So if I was to just show you what it sounds like playing the riff. It's a very mid-focus sound, so if I bring the rhythm guitar in with that, it's mostly just the growl in the middle that you can hear. You can't really hear any of the bottom or the top end. There's definitely no top end fret rattle because there is no frets. So I'd like to quickly talk about Tom's vocal on this track actually, because it's very fast. So what we had to do is to get enough power through it, is we tracked it kind of almost line by line, because the other songs he was doing more than line by line at a time. This one, because it's very fast and very aggressive, kind of had to do a bit more line by line, which kind of leads it to being sounding a bit more desperate in its sound. And really just like frustrated in its sound, which correlates well with the themes of the track. Artistic intent and all that. So as you can hear in the pre-choruses there, we've got another bit where our guitarist Louie does some background vocals with his very distinctive style. You can't miss, anytime he enters, you can't miss him. You absolutely can't. So coming out of that, we go into the chorus. Now this is a very interesting chorus, because I initially wrote the lead part for this as, which is the most In Flames riff ever to the most In Flames riff never to be written by In Flames. I just intended that as a guitar melody, but Tom and Ricky, the drummer, our drummer, who helps write lyrics and melodies sometimes, heard that as a vocal melody as well. So we end up with this.
See these kings turn to mice in the wake of the storm. Their lives bear the weight of the world.
Which was an interesting thing to do arrangement-wise, because in that now it kind of stands quite static, because the melody is quite fifthsy, really. Go with root fifth and then uses the minor sixth, because I love the sound of the 5 to the minor 6. One of my favourite harmonic changes. It's very simple, but I enjoy it. So I had to think of something to make the rest of the chorus not just be quite flat. So what I came up with was this instance. Which is the chords reversed and takes a bit from the demo that we did. So initially the demo had kind of Tom being his own choir around it. That didn't make the final cut. So what I did is I went in, bounced all of the vocal track for that down, and then reversed them. So harmonically, it's the chords are a B minor to an F sharp minor to an F sharp minor with G in the bass. Now Tom was singing the root notes in that, so B, F sharp, G. What I did with this, because I reversed it, he now sings G, F sharp, B. So the F sharp is correct over it, but it starts off, the F sharp's in the same place because it's in the middle. Then he's starting with the G over the B chord and then the B over the G chord, which adds a little bit more movement to it. And rhythm guitar chords wise, it's quite strange for like an aggressive rhythm guitar song. It's just picked chords. That B minor, F sharp minor, G in the bass. And in the same way we did with Worlds Apart, if you've not seen that episode, go back and watch that episode. We decided to double that bit with acoustic guitars because, as I said in that episode, it gets quite muddy if you use distorted guitars with that kind of picked out chord. So having that acoustic guitar there helps emphasize the note to the chord. So you're always sure of what chord you're on, rather than it just getting mushy. So I don't know if any one of you out there's tried to record that kind of thing with a distorted guitar. A lot of time, if you don't have the perfect tone and you haven't produced it entirely correctly, it just gets really muddy. And then bass-wise, just to make it a bit more interesting, so I wasn't just constantly. So as you can see here, that is just that waveform. The bass track at the top there is just constant. So for this one, as I did with a bit of that bridge section in Of Suffering, I decided to add some space to it. So I came up with this bass line. And because it's a fretless bass, I had to get the in on the top because it's illegal. Actually, it's actually in UK law. If you're holding a fretless bass and don't go at least one part in the song, you just get arrested. This bass line actually is an adapted version of one of the riffs in Veil of Maya by Cynic, but played way simpler and in a different key. So it's not quite fully ripped off. So if we go back to the vocal there, this is a case of a big stack of toms.
See these kings turn to mice in the wake of the storm. Their lives bear the weight of the world.
I apologise for any technical difficulties. My computer does not like running screen recording and Logic at the same time, but you know, gotta do what you gotta do. So what we've got there is Tom singing the main melody and then adding a lower harmony there to thicken the sound out. Back into a verse, but with a solo over the top of it. And now Louie and John have to play that every time we play it. Haha. We've got a shorter verse here. The top harmony comes in over the top. Pre-chorus. Back into this chorus again. This time it's a double chorus. This is the last time this chorus appears in the song. But so halfway through, a bit of a variation in the drums. So Ricky goes from just playing this with that constant kick drum. He goes to playing more of a actual rhythm pattern. And Tom's vocal there, instead of just having singing, bring in the scream vocal over the top to add another texture. And this is where it kind of goes a bit left field. We have a time change to 6/8. Track comes back in. With some piano. Ricky can get all gentle up on the top end of his cymbals there. And then groove it with more of a hi-hat pattern there. Now that sample you can hear is from the Day the Earth Stood Still. John's a big fan of the B-movies and things like that, so he recommended we check out this kind of this film for a kind of a addition for this section, because otherwise it felt a bit empty, but we didn't want to put a vocal over it. So sample came in from there. And now everyone's least favourite bit of the song, the bass solo. You can talk amongst yourselves if you want. So what I did here is it's pretty standard. It's basically the tone I was using before with a little bit of less distortion. A little bit of chorus and a little bit of delay. And the chorus is there because 1, I'm a Jaco Pastorius fan, and 2, to cover up my slightly dodgy intonation. But every fretless player does that, and anyone that doesn't is lying. Now, I don't consider myself a particularly soloistic kind of person or player. This was more just to add something different, because we've already had a couple of guitar solos and we hadn't had a bass solo yet. So I thought to take a solo over more of a low energy section is always, I think it's always best for bass. I'm not really a fan of taking solos over like high energy sections. It's a lot harder for bass to cut through, and sounds weird if the bass were to drop out. If you're playing a riff with a bass soloing over the top of it, it sounds weird that there's no bass taking up that low end. So in this section, because we've got the synths doing the synth thing with some strings and then acoustic guitars, it gives me an excuse to come up and play something melodic. So for this section, I try to not play just within pentatonic. It's mostly just B Aeolian, because that's how my brain works. That's a phrase nicked from Selkie's The Endless Obsession by Between the Buried and Me. It was nicked out of the guitar solo. but with the fretless bass on the end. Because as I said, it's illegal to not do that. The only thing I was trying to emphasize is avoiding playing that higher octave of B on this first phrase. So that's up B minor arpeggio, so like a 1 3 5 7, and then instead of going to the 1 again, I skip straight up to the 9 and then play the third up an octave, which is the 10. Just because I didn't want to have the resolution kind of being two bars in, but otherwise I just kind of stopped paying attention. So back into the more interesting heavy section. Ricky an excuse to play some grooves with his tom drums, because we haven't really done them right at this point in the EP. We have this sound. Sounding absolutely fat. And the re-entry of Tom's vocal here, which this was a kind of a last minute addition. I think he wrote the lyrics for this bit the week of going to the studio, like whilst we were recording guitars and stuff, I think. Sounds fantastic. And as we come up here to the first of the super long guitar solo type section. First up here is John playing solo. And to give more room to the solos here, I dropped the synths out completely. Solo. This is something Louie and Tom do a lot. Is Louie will take a solo and Tom will do some vocal over it, but they don't really clash with each other, which is a really interesting aspect of my band. And something Louie also does a lot is he brings in this kind of melody into his solos, which will then appear either for the rest of the song or in other songs that we do. Harmony here, and then the synths come back in. Get the synths in here. Here's a piano and synth pad. I'm pretty sure that bright piano you can hear is just the stock Logic Steinway grand piano sound, which anyone can have for free. So all of the chords in the rhythm guitar here are ninth chords, because when we wrote it, it kind of came out as a bit too flat, just having straight power chords. So adding that little bit of just high-end information, having that ninth on top, just kind of opened it up a little bit more. Here we go, the ending. Can't think of an ending, just do a fade out. The 80s trick. So that is us done. That is the final track on the EP, and thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this kind of thing, let us know and we'll see if we can do some more of them. If you're interested in hearing the demos for this, let me know, and I'll see if I can dig them out of my poorly organised and formatted hard drive collection, because they'll be on there somewhere. It just might take me a while. If you've got any questions, just drop us a message on Facebook or Instagram. We are Earthbound Music UK on both of them. And if by some strange turn of events you've not heard the actual EP yet, go check that out on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever your streaming service of choice is. It's up there, and we'd appreciate it if you'd give us a listen. Thank you very much again for watching, and goodbye.